Hello, this is my basic fracture guide. I'm going to be talking about the most important things on this map on a macro level. So we're going to talk about defense and sites right now. So the sites are sort of naturally pinched or flanked or crunched, whatever you want to call it, or whatever you want to call it. They will go tower, arcade, and B main for B. And for A, they'll go sand, they'll go main, and they'll go drop. So from a defender's perspective, we're going to get flanked every single time, and we want to not have that happen. So how do we stop that? And the most important thing to note is that we're going to have to split our team up into strong side and weak side. If you don't know what strong side and weak side means, I have explained it before in previous videos. I don't quite remember which ones. But if you do have a question about it, feel free to put them down in the comments and I'll answer and explain what strong side versus weak side means. But essentially, we want to put our strong side in somewhere. In somewhere, right? We don't really know where yet. So where do we put our strong side, which should generally be 3 players? Where do we put these 3 players? So on Fracture, I identify the places that we'll put our strong side as the 4 quadrants of Fracture, which are dish and drop. There is arcade and bench. There is B main, and there is A main and sand. These are the places you want to put your strong side. But the question is, which one? And this is all down to like reads or like what you think is the strongest place to take. Generally, the strongest place to take is going to be these 2 areas. So it's going to be arcade and bench, and it's going to be A main and sand. The reason why is because these tend to have more access to the site. So from arcade, you tend to get more access through tower and this way. This way, I don't even know what people call this, to be honest, just A arcade, I guess. And then with A, it's through the door. And into sand and through main. But as you can see on the flip side, B main doesn't really have that access. It does have access to arcade, but doesn't have access directly to B site like tower does. And on this side, drop is just horrendous to get out of most of the time and doesn't have any alternative into the A site. So these 2 areas tend to be less valuable, while these 2 areas tend to be more valuable. So this is going to be more likely you'll send 3s here. Less likely you'll send them here. There are going to be times you'll do that. Basically, it's just based on reads. If you want to contest this position, you know they're going to send maybe 2 players here, and you know you're going to have an advantage with a 3. So you're going to send the 3 here to contest this 2, and you'll end up like maybe trading out and getting 1 left, but you'll be a 3v3, which would probably be worst case. Actually, wait. Yeah, it'd be worst case, yeah. But yeah, sometimes you won't trade out and it'd be perfect. But essentially, I'll talk about the 2 most important ones for the strong side. So if we send 3 players here, I'm actually going to put this out on the map for you. So we might end up having a breach, doing a stun like this, and eventually he'll do a flash on the wall. Not quite like this, but it's something like this, right? Along these lines. And then we've got the Raze, who might do a nade over and might even satchel in eventually. And then we've also got a Jet, who will just prime her dash and dash away when she needs to, when she's taken her first fight. And essentially what this does is it creates a nice split in the map. So if these 3 players are pressuring arcade and dish, what it will do, the enemy players in dish, if there are any, will speed up, or they'll have to try and contest this 3. And obviously that's based on their numbers. If it's like 1 lurk, like a little cipher, like a cipher here, then they probably will not try and contest. They'll probably try and find space alternatively. So they'll probably try and find a kill on weak side or something. Well, if it's maybe a 3, they have dish, they might try and contest you here. But as you can see, we aren't fighting on sites, and that's the main important thing. We're fighting equal fights here. We're not fighting flanks. We're completely fine with that. We love that, in fact, as defense. And it also has like a couple of other effects, right? It stops an enemy team from doing a B split, because if they want to do a B split, we are going to be contesting, most likely we're going to be contesting their 3, because as I've said, this is more important than B main. So most of the time we should have 3 at arcade. And that means that we're going to have a 3-on-3 here, and it's absolute carnage, but we're not getting flanked. In fact, we might get flanked by under, technically, but most of the time we're not going to get flanked. Because these 2 players will probably actually try and find space on B while the 3 are fighting, because we're not going to have anyone here, most likely. We might end up having like the breach sort of jiggle this and stuff like this, but he won't actually contest this position with his life. But essentially what we do, we're just avoiding the fight on B. And obviously if they don't have anyone B, and they decide or they don't decide to put anyone arcade and they all go through main, we're going to beat that play every time because we're going to have a better angle of retaking, right? We're going to have the ability to go up into tower. We're going to have the ability to go through arcade. We're going to have the ability to go CT and teen. So we're actually going to have way more angles of attack, and they're going to be limited to B main and B, and maybe a bit of tower, right? And obviously tower can be taken quite fast. If like we have like maybe the breach is up there instead of here, then it'd be a lot easier because you have to do the breach normal play for attack. That you would see a lot or quite common. But essentially, the important part macro-wise is that we have limited the chances of us being flanked, and we've also made it a bit more conventional in a way that, actually, no, we haven't even made it conventional, really. We've actually flipped the flank on them by flanking through multiple angles, which is perfect, right? We want that to happen, but that's the idea of a fracture. We want to flip the flank on them or make it at least conventional as a defending team. So if they go A, for instance, if we have our 3 here, and they have a 2, and they have a 3, I'm doing enemies as, or like attacking team as circles. I'll do the defenders as squares. And we have the 2 here, like this. So we'll have like a Brim and a Killjoy. Actually, I could probably do it with these, but it maybe take a bit more time. I just want to make sure I explain things. So the important thing here is that will crunch the site, but we'll play retake with these 2 players. So we'll have the Killjoy with ult maybe, or maybe the Brimstone, or maybe they'll have like equal guns, so they won't need to find a play necessarily on the weak side. They might even pressure early on, so we'll have like a Brim smoke here. Maybe the enemy KO would have, or the attacking KO would have to flash through this smoke, so we're depleting their util as the weak side even, for stuff like that. And what's going to happen is they're going to take A main, or sorry, they're going to take A like this, and they're going to have all this space. But as a 3, we can disrupt their weak side, and essentially make it and flip it, right? We can disrupt their weak side. If I actually can go back far enough, we can disrupt this this weak side here. And what will happen is then we'll say we trade out. We'll have a 1 here, and then we'll have a 2 here. It'll be a 3v3. We may notice that we have more angles to use than they do, right? So we actually end up with a net advantage on the map. Obviously, drop isn't the greatest. So, you know, maybe not the greatest to have drop, but still, it's still a better angle of attack this way than just having 3 player CT. Also, that goes on with the flip side as well. If you put 3 players as defense in A main, you can do the same if they go B, and you can disrupt their B main presence and then flip the map this way. And obviously, it's a bit worse because you know, this is more conventional where they'll have. It's more of a straight line of territory, and we want more flanks. So maybe you'll have the 3 go under and disrupt arcade afterwards, or maybe just 1 player from the 3 will do that and things like that. So the idea for this map is what I'm saying. I think I'm fairly convoluting it a bit, but the main thing is that we're looking to flip the enemy's flanks or the attacking flanks in favor of defense by using strong side to take a quadrant. Is essentially what we're looking for. I'm also going to talk a bit quickly about eco crunches as well. So this is one that I do a lot on in ranked. I'll call for this. Whether I get it, different story, but I'll call for it at least. So I'll send 3 arcade and bench, and I'll send 2 dish. We'll have a 0 and a 0. And the important part about this is that we're completely giving up this space. And you'll notice that I'm just creating a straight line across here, right? We want this space, they can have this space. But ideally, we want to crunch the players here for a numbers advantage, and we're going to essentially create an even state on the map where we have one side, they have the other. That's kind of how it'll go. Obviously, we give up CT for this, which is not ideal, but the odds is that if they go here, they won't be looking for rotations through it. So if we go rotate back, we will actually be like kind of splitting the map like this instead. But that's maybe a bit too high level. But essentially, what we're going to do with this eco is I want these 2 players. I want these 2 players to play fairly aggressive, but still for their life. So they'll see someone and they'll kind of try and keep fighting them. They'll like bob and weave. They'll jump spot and have pressure here. And what this will do, these players, because we're on eco, they probably won't go close because they'll have vandals or phantoms. So they'll sit here and try and contest these 2 from like like while they're jump spotting and like with classics or something else like that, and they definitely won't want to get close to classics as Vandal. So what they'll do is they'll sit in this area, and then the 3 can use that as a contact. So these 3 players will be playing contact. They'll walk up, and as soon as they contact either themselves in arcade, or if these players contact, they'll start running into having a fight, either this angle here or obviously against people in arcade. And what this will do is it will split the map, and you will also find potential kills on eco, and you'll end up maybe even with a numbers advantage on eco with a map that's kind of split in a more conventional way, which can obviously benefit as an eco because the attackers also had the advantage map design wise, and we've managed to flip that to neutral as well as having a numbers advantage. That's what that player can sort of do, and I think that's kind of it for defense. And I'm going to talk briefly about attack, because attack doesn't really have a massive amount to talk about. It's more about on attack, what you want to do is you want to make sure you're using both sides of the map. You want to use these natural flanks that you have with the map, and the most important thing as well with attack is, as we were talking about on defense, we're talking about the enemy was going to have a strong side. As attack, we want to identify this strong side. We want to know where it's playing. If we know it's going to play A main, then we will go B. Or maybe we'll go 5 dish and we'll flank it. There's plenty of options we have once we identify this strong side, because we also know what they're intending to do, right? We know that they want to do a flank. We know that they want to kind of create multiple areas where they're going to flank from, and maybe we want to use that to our advantage. We'll use the other side of the map to take B and have our nice natural flank. And the enemy team may be caught off guard on their weak side. Obviously, it's ranked, so the weak side is going to be definitely very weak because they won't understand. A lot of people don't understand what weak side is. So if you do go attack the weak side and you've identified the strong side, most of the time you'll win. If you just wait a bit to identify this, or if you have a good read, if the enemy team does exactly the same thing every round and you know it every round, then just say to your team, let's go to this weak side every time. Just split up, go B, and we'll win every time because this weak side won't be able to do anything to us, and we'll get the B site for free every time. There's also arguments as well with like eco. If you're against an eco, then using the natural flanks might not be the best choice because you might end up giving them 1v1s. For instance, as I just said with the eco, an eco that I usually like to call is it will punish the players that decide to split against an eco. If they don't identify that you're ecoing and they split up on bridge, then they're going to have problems, right? That they're going to lose that round because we're going to have numbers advantage pushing into them, and we'll retrieve their guns and get numbers advantage, as well as having a more map positional, not exactly advantage, but a more neutral state, which is not good for attackers, as they already start off with the advantage state. So yeah, that's kind of it for Fracture. Hopefully I did that justice. I'm not sure exactly how comprehensive that was, because I was a bit convoluted there, I think. So I'm still getting better at this sort of format. I have to do little notes because I have a tendency to go off track. So hopefully it was good enough to learn some stuff. So I'll see you in my next one.